Hello, hello. Thank you everyone for jumping onto the stream. Really excited to see some people already in the chat. Really looking forward to a Hacktoberfest conversation today, particularly sort of talking about our experience so far. We've had some really great contributions, but also going through reviewing some different contributions live on the stream, as well as potentially making some of our own contributions. So really excited to be here with you today. Huge shout out to Earl as well, who's sitting in the background helping me run this stream. I know it's super late for him in the US, so really appreciate that as well. Alrighty, so I will get started. What I wanted to do firstly is, as a reminder, if you're contributing in this year's Hacktoberfest event, don't forget to come in and add a comment here on this post. So this post, which you reach through devlink.sn/Hacktoberfest, is a really great resource that sort of takes us through both some of our historical numbers in terms of, say, the contributions we've had in years past, some content from Laszlo and Earl about contributions so far, a bit of an explainer on those different repositories, but it's also a place where you can indicate your what you've achieved during Hacktoberfest as well. So if you've already gotten started with this, you've been posting about it, or you're just really excited that you've hit your 6th PR or even less than that, don't forget to come in and post on this. Like you can see many of your peers in the chat here, we've got some great contributors adding their content, adding ideas and snippets to different repositories, and interacting with all of those as well. So we've already had a great amount of people. I can see 7 different pages through the community of people commenting that they've made it to those 6. I'm very lucky myself that I can also say that I've been able to reach that 6. Definitely really excited with how much activity we're already seeing this year. We're only halfway through, and we're definitely above the numbers that we've had in previous years. So we're just seeing the community continue to engage and be really excited about Hacktoberfest and what they can do. It's been really interesting working through these new repositories. I did get a shirt as well. As a reminder, of course, while there is some ServiceNow prizes that we're talking about in this thread here, if you're within the first 10,000 people to have reached that 6 PRs with the Hacktoberfest sort of broader event run by DigitalOcean, they will also award a shirt. Only for those first 10,000, they had taken the shirt away, which for some people I know was a really huge thing. I think it's really awesome to contribute regardless, but shirts are always fun as well. As you can see, I love my ServiceNow swag. I also love my Hacktoberfest swag. So really excited to see them bringing back the shirts in sort of a very eco-minded and friendly way, because alongside those shirts we're also planting a tree with that 6th PR for those first 10,000 folks as well. So that was a really cool thing to see, and I'll scroll down actually on my profile and sort of highlight that. Of course, we've got those holopin badges coming back, but Tree Nation here, Tree Nation indicates that tree being planted as well. I thought it was the first 10,000, but it does look like they've actually taken away or not mentioning that restriction there. So don't feel like you're limited by that either. Do get involved. My tree is a Indian gooseberry tree. I do not know exactly which part of India that it's been planted in, but it's really cool. They will give you details, a map of where it is, and some details about its how long it's been around as well. So really fun, really great way to contribute, but also having some of that eco-conscious mindset behind that contribution as well, which I think is a theme that we've also really been able to see this year in terms of the Hat for Good project in particular. We've gotten to see some really interesting contributions so far in terms of different ideas to support just our communities to support during disasters, all sorts of situations there that people are coming up with these great solutions using, whether it's simply App Engine or building on top of CSM and field service management, all of these nuanced, interesting ideas that are really coming out, and people are really getting to express that creativity, even if they're not necessarily able or creating the application themselves there. So that's a really exciting part of that project this year, and having that project alongside Code Snippets, our old faithful, as well as Action Pack as well. And Action Pack, of course, being super close to my heart, is really an action-packed repository full of actions. It's the repository we've introduced that's really intended to be something you can install and use during your day-to-day, to be able to get involved and leverage actions that might not exist in ServiceNow out of the box. We've had some really interesting contributions. We've had people come up with ideas that I hadn't added in there initially. So seeing people come up and create what they've added themselves, it's been really awesome to see sort of all these different styles of contribution coming in. Really awesome to see somebody from Twitch commenting about an evening stream. Really excited that I'm able to run this session with the support, of course, of Earl, who it's very late for at the moment. But having a opportunity really for us to show up in this time zone with such a heavy presence from India, of course, as well as folks, whether it's in New Zealand, which 11 p.m. could quite possibly be, or even colleagues over in Hawaii as well. We've got all sorts of different time zones that we can reach, and it's a really exciting part of having this global team and this global team of reviewers as well. Now, you've heard me talk. We all love me talking, but not as much as we love Hacktoberfest, and I think that's really what I'd like to start to get into. I'd like to talk firstly a little bit about some of these different contributions and going through and actually processing some pull requests that have been added in. I think that would be a really good start to sort of look at some of those great contributions and how you go through the process of sort of reviewing or contributing to some of these repos as well. In addition, I'm hoping to add some new features into Action Pack as part of this, going through all of these different sort of steps with the time that we've got here. I've eaten up 8 minutes though, so I better get cracking. Alrighty, so I've just pulled up the Hack for Good repository here at this point, and what I'm going to do is go and look at the pull requests. This is something that particularly our reviewers and maintainers are coming in and doing quite regularly to see what new ideas have been added in by the community, what have we seen, and how are we then going to review it. So we've got some great automations sitting in the background that help us to deal particularly with a large amount of content. So many people are so excited to be contributing, and these automations then help us to make sure that people have read the contributing document that's part of the repo, that they've followed those steps so that we're going to be easily able to review that content and know that we can go forward and approve that from there. So I'm going to start in, as we can see here, my lovely little photo. I'm going to start in on the Village Reach idea that we've had added here by, I'm not going to try and say your name there, sorry, but really glad that we've got this first contribution here. This person's given us a lovely detailed description about what their application is and sort of where they target this for. They reckon that they'll use IoT sensors and feed that information into ServiceNow using, like I mentioned, field service management and customer service management. Also using the database behind ServiceNow to help them with the different stock levels and the performance of that overall application and the service that's being delivered through it. So really exciting. We can see that 2 checks have passed on this one already. We've got a validation pull request automation, and like we've talked about before, that's just making sure that that's being designed and is the right sort of files. We're not seeing just a JavaScript file or a Python script, which we have seen before added into these repos, but instead we're seeing an XML file, which is what we'd expect because this is a metadata contribution. I can go over and see the files that were changed. Now, I have been working with ServiceNow long enough that I don't mind looking at XML one bit. Particularly know that this is going to be a complex data object. In particular, we're looking at some HTML inside here. That said, reviewing like this isn't for everyone. And so what we can also do on top of just looking at these documents and the dot points that have been added here, for example, is I can actually pull this into my instance and make sure that it's looking right for what I want to be doing with that application. And I've just seen the note from Earl to Zoom, so stand by while I remember which button I'm trying to press. There we go. That should be a lot more zoomed. Just got to give it a moment to follow through on the stream to make sure I'm seeing a better size. Perfect. That's looking good. Hopefully that's a lot better. Awesome. Now, like I said, we've got this one here, and I'm actually going to pull it into my instance. That way I don't have to just be reading it as an XML, but instead I can actually look at that within the environment. So going in here, I've got my tabs open already for my instance. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to open ServiceNow Studio. This is a Zurich instance, and that means that on Zurich I am able to take advantage of the source control functionality that's now been added into this studio, really helping us to close all of those remaining gaps that people were perceiving between this app and, of course, some of the others that have existed in the past, our legacy studio, as sort of that main historical solution. Alrighty, now I've gotten into my application here and I want to open the app details of this. So in this case, I've actually done some development in Hack for Good in this instance before. What that means is I'm sitting on a branch that I created within this instance. Simple enough name, Hack for Good idea was what I called that branch. That branch won't have existed within the main repository, and when I'm wanting to pull down the latest information, I need to pull that from main. So there's a couple of things I need to do here, and this is something that can catch out some of our contributors who do come in and go to add their second file, and then they'll often hear back from the oh, I'm very inspired when it comes to branch naming, but definitely when it comes to making sure that only the correct file, only the file that you meant to add is in that PR, as opposed to having the one that you developed just before showing up. And that's because we haven't properly changed what branch we're in. So there's a couple of components to this, of course, is while I want to sync this in, I need to make sure that I've got the latest of Hack for Good within my own fork. So this here was sitting at the Hack for Good in the ServiceNow dev program. I need to go to my repositories, which I'll do just here, and make sure that I've got the latest fork. As you can see, I must have contributed my idea about 413 commits ago. And so what I'm going to do now is sync that fork, make sure that I can sync it up to date on that main branch. Now, the reason I'm doing that is to make sure that I have all of the latest information for comparison and for pushing them into the main repo, or in this case, if I'm trying to pull down someone's contribution. So just syncing this one up to date there, because what I might want to do, for example, is create a fork of that person's repository onto my own to check that. Now, in this case, I've synced that up to date, and we'll see how that looks in a second. But firstly, I'm going to go through and retrieve this person's version from their repo. So just coming in here, what I did, middle click on this one so I can open that on the specific branch. You can see that that's in their user. and that's their Hack for Good idea. So what I'm going to do is copy the URL. Now, if you're like me and you've already installed the application into your instance, the process to replace that is a bit more involved. Firstly, what I need to do is go and delete the application itself. I don't technically need to delete it. I can change the repository configuration. So there are two ways to do it. One, you could remove the application entirely from your environment. If you do that, it does mean that you can then pull down that application directly from the remote again. In this case, that would be this person's repository. But I know that I've got a shortcut here, and what I'd do instead would be to go into the linked repository configuration. There's a couple of ways that you can do that. One would be to edit our repository configuration here within ServiceNow Studio. To do that, it will limit me from doing the change I want to make. That's okay. We'll take a different approach. I'll go into the repository configurations now. You'll notice that you won't be able to find repository configurations within your filter navigator. What you'll want to do is navigate to the sys repo config table. If that's not something you easily remember and you've got SNUtils to hand, you can also / and then go to that same table. In this case, I've typed out that list, and so I'm just going to pull that one up, wait for it to refresh the list I was on, and we're now ready to go in here. I'm going to open this record, and I can see that I can't update the URL, but I can delete this record altogether. So what I'm going to do is go through and delete that. And it will also delete the links to the two branches that have existed within this. We saw before, we've got my Hack for Good idea branch and the main branch as well. So I'm deleting that one there. Now that's something that you would often do in either case when you're pulling these in. So if I come in here, I will just refresh my ServiceNow Studio. What I mean by that is if you do delete the application, that doesn't automatically delete the repo configuration. It isn't created within your application scope, and that's because the application really needs to exist with it separately from that. Otherwise, it wouldn't have the ability to pull it in, and it would be trying to ship that into every instance. So it makes a lot of sense that it's not within that scope, but it just means that there is that additional step that you have to do in order to make that link. So in this case, I'm going to try and link instead to that person's repository that we were working with. So you can see it's on my clipboard here. I'm going to not go with my instance name. I'm going to grab this person's, let's say I will grab main for them so that I can then switch to this branch. My main. Just put my email in here and use my credentials. Now we'll see what happens when I do it live. That I only have read access. Cool. That's all right. That's not surprising at all. It is annoying though. Alrighty, so in that case, if I only have read access and I'm not able to pull that into my instance as a result, what I will then need to do is go through, come into this branch. I would like to pull request, head repository to my repository. I'm going to create a new, this is a bit more involved to do it this way, but I'm going to create another branch. And you can see now why I do instead go and read the XML. There is a lot more work involved, particularly when you can't edit or contribute to that head as a result of that PR. It's a bit involved behind the scenes, but I just need to reload this one more time. Now I've got load stream and this one. Text repository. So this, as you can see from this arrow, it means that I'm merging from this person's head on that branch into load stream. Alrighty, create PR. I am going to do create pull request. And then from here, I will just approve this request. Now this PR, you might think, oh, great, I've got a PR. This is one of my 6 for Hacktoberfest. That won't apply because the fork that I'm running off, my personal fork, is not going to count towards that. It's not listed with the label. And when it's a self-approved PR, you're also not going to have that same sort of validation there. So something to keep in the back of your mind is in terms of PRs that you're contributing for Hacktoberfest, you're wanting to look for particularly the Hacktoberfest and Hacktoberfest accepted labels, sometimes the year as well. That year really helps us to sort of see, did this repo do it in previous years, but they're not necessarily invested in doing that this year. So because my fork of that doesn't have that, that's not something that will be that I'll be wanting to work with there. So I've created this PR, just gonna refresh this because it is taking a moment to work out what it's doing. You can see no conflicts. The only file that's changed into my branch here is this new file that they've added. Nice and easy, coming back to conversation and squash and merge. Squash and merge is a habit. All that does is compile what could have been 10 or 20 different commits, generally 1 or 2, but as many as you need, down into one for the repository that we're sending that to. So for us maintaining the Hacktoberfest repository, such as Action Pack, you might be contributing 5 or 6 different commits. You might be one of those people who likes to press save every 5 seconds, and I don't blame anyone for that at all. But it does mean that you then want to make sure your different commits are all compiled together. Git's going to handle that for you, but when we pull that into the main repo, we don't necessarily need to see 6 different commits from that user. And so squash and merge just combines that into a single commit, so that in terms of the history from the repository, so the core Action Pack repository, we're not seeing those 6, we're just seeing that one commit, which includes the content of all 6. Explanation probably a little bit long, but hopefully that just gives a bit of insight into why you do that way. Alrighty, all of that work done is now so that I can work with this instance of mine, this version of the repository. I can go into here and grab the URL, pretty much redoing the work that I removed by removing that configuration, by linking this into source control. The reason I'm now able to link this where I wasn't before is because I was missing that key component of the key component of authentication effectively. So I only had read access to this person's repository while I have read and write to my own. Apologies for my darling cats at the door. I hear that they're coming through. You can see that we've got my absolutely lovely fluffy girl here, but the criminals who will happily be running across my desk, and you'd see them on my shoulders, did get locked out of the room. So apologies for the meow background sounds. It is all in good intention. I promise I'm not torturing her by not letting her in the room. Alrighty, in that time, she gave a great segue. That'll be Frida, my cat there. We've now got our link to source control completed because that's, again, a writable repository. All right, allowing the cats in. We'll see how we go with that one. Just for Viraj there. So we've gotten that all sorted. So we can see that we've now got this synced in, and we've got 206 different files in here, including all of those different contributions for the repo itself. Now, you could go from the application and go and look for the files that have been added into it from there. What I find is generally easier would be now to go to the Hack for Good portal from that instance. So in this case, going to open now the tabs, wipe off the rest of my URL if it wants to play nicely, which it does not. So I'm just going to go to /h4/h. And this is why you do it live. We get to see you type portals in caps lock. We go Hack for Good here. And I'm going to try it, which will let me to that portal without apparently my keyboard tripping me up. So going in, we can now look for our submitted ideas in here. And what we're looking for in particular was the submitted idea that this person gave on their PR. So going back to the repo for a moment, we're looking for Village Reach, and the name itself is going to be sitting here. Yep, Village Reach hyphen directly after, and then cold chain. So coming in before we do that, I have missed something because we are currently sitting on the main branch. Can't see that one on main, which is why I was seeing mine as one of the most recent. I actually want to change to Loadstream. Loadstream, of course, being named in my imaginative naming style for the branch that I'm loading on stream. As I mentioned, we do have one of my lovely cats already on my desk, but only meaning well. She does help me with reviewing these, and if I ever misclick, I'll blame it on the cat. Alrighty, so we've pulled that in. That will now let us see the contribution, including the contribution from our colleague who's put in that PR here. Exactly, the branch manager. Alrighty, all of those processes done, we can now see Village Reach. So pulling that one up, I love this portal, by the way. Kudos to Laszlo and also the Hack for Good team with all these ideas behind the scenes. Really appreciate what we've got here. So we can see, of course, our problem statement looking good. We've got our header here. And then these different components of the solution. So integration hub, performance analytics, all of these things make total sense. And it's a really sort of interesting and neat idea that this person's brought in. I'm really happy with that. We did go through a longer process, but I thought it was a great opportunity to sort of walk through and show those steps as well. Now, though, let's get to the fun of the actual pull request. So I've reviewed that one. I've got this one assigned to myself already. If it wasn't already assigned to me, it's something I would do. And that's just to make sure that I can reflect that I've picked this one up so my peer reviewers are able to leave this one to me and move on to the next one. I'm glad that everybody loves the meows. I love them too. It's why they get to get away with so much. I just thought I would try to reduce their impact on the stream itself. We had middling luck with that, let's say. Alrighty, so on top of assigning this PR to myself, I now want to go through and review those changes. And I just want to make sure that I'm happy with that and I've approved that. In this case, we've looked at it, we're really happy with it. It makes total sense. If it was a contribution that was inappropriate, let's say this person was using this and trying to quote unquote grief the application to add sort of content that would very much be undesirable. It's just lots of curse words throughout it and no actual ideas. Or again, those examples of Python or JavaScript where we're just looking for this file, I might request changes or I might have to out and out say, no, unfortunately, that's not in the spirit of this repository. In this case, though, this contribution, and I've got to say it because it is Git law, looks good to me. That is to say, it is a contribution that I approve. I'm happy with it. Looks great. Thank you for your contribution to the repo and the stream. And apologies for my loud keyboard. Hopefully the noise isn't too deafening for that one. And for being part of the stream. Alrighty, so approving that one, I'm happy with that. Now all I need to do is make sure that all of these have run happily. I can again go in and squash and merge. Alrighty, perfect. And that's a PR. That was a slower process because I was walking through how you pull it into the instance and back out. But that's one of the a few of the different processes that we take, whether we're looking at Action Pack. Action Pack in particular, reading the XML is quite difficult because a flow action, much like a flow itself, will combine a bunch of smaller metadata files. So that is your variables, your different records into, so I've just seen a comment from Twitch there of the branch manager. Absolutely love it. I really missed that opportunity. I will get her a Git account and that label shortly. We'll make it happen. In the meantime, though, we're really able to sort of see in those cases like Action Pack actions that ServiceNow has taken the opportunity to combine 20 or 30 different metadata files into a single file, just for simplicity, to make sure that that's all moving together and nothing's fallen out of that bundle, which is really handy for us to then work with and use from there. So I will go through and show an Action Pack contribution shortly, but while we're online, we've got a couple of other contributions, both from two of our great reviewers as well. We've got volunteer reviewers that are getting involved. Anybody who's really interested and passionate, we always encourage them to get involved and start working with Git and getting part of Hacktoberfest. You'll often see folks like Ravi here. Ravi's been part of the work in previous years and just being a part of it as a contributor. And some people then sort of build on that and want to come and get involved as well. So we're really grateful to have all of these great contributors coming in and getting involved in the action. Now, this is actually a really great example to look at and work through, just in terms of, I mentioned earlier in the stream, when you create a branch from an existing branch, because if you haven't synced your fork up to date and then you're creating branches on top of that, what can happen is you'll have, possibly you'll need to do a sync to bring that up to date, but you'll also be creating updates on top of other updates. And what I mean by that is something that you'll often see, and I'm just going to see if I can get a Git forking diagram. And I really hope that they don't think I'm in the Good Place show with the word fork there. What I'm effectively looking to show is some of these examples here. So this is using tags, but if we think of this tree model as, actually this one's far better. If we think of this tree model that we've got here, we've got our main and then we've got our develop. Now that develop is showing the sort of main branch, that first branch. In my example that we had before, that could be the branch for Hack for Good idea. We've seen that, and when I'm working in ServiceNow, when I change to a branch and then create another branch, what happens is it creates based off of that branch that I'm on. So if instead of develop, we're calling that Hack for Good idea, if I created a branch directly off that, then that's actually, in this case, feature. That's actually being created directly off that. It has no basis to try and create that directly off main. So instead it's creating that directly off feature. What that means is you'll see multiple of those contributions that differ from main, because I have made this contribution up here and then this contribution up here, but it may not have been synced back to main in that time. You'll also see that on a fork where you've, on a branch in a fork, so from main to Hack for Good, where you've synced the branch that is your Hack for Good branch, but you haven't actually merge that back into main. So you might have the latest information. We imagine a dotted line from main to develop. You might have the latest information onto that one, but you're still working on a separate path of the history. A little bit of a segue there, but the reason I wanted to highlight that is we can see that in some of Ravi's historical commits here. To be super clear, this isn't a bad thing. It's not a concern to have multiple of those, but it does help us to understand why we're seeing that different history that we've got here. So get placed and volunteer teach, we're only seeing one file changed, but we're seeing all of these different commits. And that's because there is a branch that Ravi's been working from. In this case, it is just main, that he's committed one idea and merged that into the main for the overall repository, another idea merged into the main for the repository. In the meantime, there's been other contributions from other developers, and that's where we're seeing these merge from the ServiceNow dev program repo, as in the one we're sitting in here, back into his main. That's him getting that repository and that branch back up to date. He's added then a couple of more ideas, which is really great. And then he's done another sync to get that one back up to date and make sure that we're there. But that's really explaining that commit history. It's part of the power of GitHub is being able to step back to any of these individual points to be able to keep your branch in sync. And sorry, I said GitHub. It could be GitLab, it could be Bitbucket. All of these different tools can take advantage of this same functionality. So it's a really great opportunity to work through that. So brilliant. I've done a whole lot of explanation about what we're seeing in the history there, but on the whole, we're seeing passing checks and we're seeing files changed. What I'm going to do, I just missed the step. I'm going to hit assign myself, make sure that I'm saying I'm going to pick this one up, and then looking through that file really quickly. This is all looking good. I can see some great potential impact. You can see the problem statement description about commuting individually, so really trying to avoid 20 different people driving in 20 different cars when they might instead be able to drive in 5 or 6 different cars. Thank you, Ravi. Ravi did that entirely intentionally, and Astrid said it, so it's true because I said it on stream. Thank you for being a good sport there, Ravi. I did want to pick that one up, not as an example of anything wrong. It was just an example that was really great to show some of that power as well. So again, Ravi did everything correct purely in this example. I've got all of that recorded now for posterity. All jokes aside, this one's looking really good. So I really appreciate the idea that we've got here. And I'm not just saying that because I've got Ravi watching, but I'm going to go through and approve this one. Looks good to me, and thank you for being part of the stream. Alrighty, we're going to go in, we're going to approve and submit that review. Now, it is not technically necessary to do that. You'll see some of our reviewers might not go through and do that review step. It's something that is good practice and good habit, because if I was working in a role where I was doing a lot of branch merging, and even within ServiceNow, our developers are working a lot on that technology and doing those different pull request reviews, that is something that is realistically going to happen. I'm going to request, say, Earl and Laszlo come in and do a review so that we can go and see that history and go and work through those different steps, make sure that the code is right, that I've not used var.gr. I'll get Travis to approve it if I say var.gr. But then to go through and look at those different elements. So just a really great opportunity to, again, use some of that same logic that is used out there in the broader world, and you can use with ServiceNow development as well. This is something I've done at a previous organization, is work with Git and be using pull request reviews as part of automation to help us then do automated testing and releases into production. It's a lot of work, but it is a great opportunity to learn about all those different technologies. Again, going through, approving this one. We're happy, healthy, and alive. And like we can see, there was 7 different commits in this history here, but I was able to go in and quickly approve, identify that it is just the file that we're looking for, and all of those commits became one commit. I'm going to reject the rejected comments from the YouTube chat. I just do not approve. All seriousness. I can't do seriousness. I'm an Australian. We just don't do that here. There is some other great ideas I really appreciate. We've got Viraj adding some contributions in real time. And we've also got this one here from Shaquille. So I will quickly do these two, and then I'm going to jump into Action Pack. So really quickly, Heritage Hub. Alrighty, Astrid's picking this one up. All our processes are doing good so far. Some interesting things, traditions, craft stories, QR linked. Nice, interesting idea. Again, we're seeing so many different contributions that some of us, at least myself, I wouldn't have necessarily come up with this idea. And so I really appreciate all of the different work people are doing to just sit there and come up with ideas. There is no silly ideas, and there is no duplicate ideas. So if somebody else were to come up with a similar concept to this one, that would be totally okay. You might have a very different flavor on it, or a different way that you think you might solve that challenge. The thing to be careful with is don't copy. Don't have yours be, instead of Heritage Hub, it's Heritage Home. Don't sort of do that. We will keep an eye out for that. So it's always the things to be careful and mindful of, is to just go through, do come up with your own ideas. There's no such thing as a silly idea, but we do want to make sure everybody is genuinely contributing and learning. So really great idea going through this skill. We've got social media APIs, which is quite cool, gamification, UI Builder, which as people who've watched other videos from the channel, Maria Gabriela Ochoa Perez Vector will love to see that, MGOPW. So what we're going to do, we're going to review changes. Looks good to me. Approve, submit review. As you can see, it's quite a quick process when I'm not trying to show off and pull in a PR into my instance from somebody else's branch that I don't have edit access to. Alrighty. So we've done that one. We've got the last one that I was going to pick up here. And Viraj is going to get one of the quickest resolutions I can manage. Alrighty. It's thrown in a lot of great information about food. Ooh. Alrighty. So Viraj has actually added a really great comment. So he's not going to have the fastest approval, because I'll let him come in and fix this one up. Viraj has highlighted here that he wants to change the focus area. Sometimes you'll have that. You've created an initial commit that you've put the content together for, but you've realized that you've made a mistake. You've accidentally missed something that you were hoping to instead include. This is, again, why we've got that ability to do multiple commits there. So what Viraj might do in this instance would be to, in his instance, make sure he's still in the right branch. And of course, if he's on a instance that's sitting on Zurich, he'll be able to check that within ServiceNow Studio, make sure he's in that right branch there. And then he can go in, update that file. And the way he'd do that would be to go to the underlying table itself. Just to make my life easier, I'm going to copy the table name, or I would. I'll copy it from here. And then I'm going to go into the instance, go to the list. And then he'd be able to go in and say, instead of cause and cure, I'm not going to update that for this one. Oh, look at that. So I'm in the wrong scope. That will definitely not help my situation in terms of trying to update a metadata file across scope. Let's see if we can do that update now that we're in the right scope. Perfect. All right. Thought I was going to be caught out by ACLs. We love it when I'm not. Well, I love it anyway. Everyone else might be okay with it. But you can go in and then change that. Once that's changed, because this is being captured and the table structure that it's sitting in means that we are capturing those updates into the sys update XML as by virtue of it being a metadata file. That change will count like a change to a catalog item or anything else. So you'll still be able to go in, save that, and update that. So really appreciate you adding that example in Virage. It's a great example of being able to go through and update and make that change. I am sorry that I will make you work slightly harder by updating that PR with the second commit there. But definitely, it's really speaking to the power and ease of this technology that you'd be able to come in, both update that file as a metadata file from ServiceNow, and then commit that back in. But even if you'd made sort of a choice of different change them from what you'd expected, what you might do is be able to go to a specific commit, and you could even roll back or grab information from that specific commit to go through and compare as well. There's a whole bunch you can do, particularly when you get into the command line where you're doing rebases, you're doing fetches or merging back to a certain point within the overall hierarchy, so that if you made a change that you didn't want to make and you got a few commits in, you're able to roll that all the way back really swiftly and easily with Git. So it is a really powerful way to interact with the application. Alrighty, lots of words. Really appreciate we've got some great activity going on. Just shout out to Fedora in particular on Twitch for being our main Twitch interaction and commenter. Really love to see that. And of course, lovely colleagues who are joining us on YouTube as well. Really appreciate that. But like I said, we've done some Hack for Good contributions. We can see that we've been able to work through a few of those PRs and a couple of those coming in during this stream itself. Really exciting to see all of that different contribution and action. Now we're going to go into Action Pack. So I mentioned earlier that in Action Pack, what I'd like to do is go ahead and add categories. So at the moment, what we've got is we've got a bunch of contributors adding all sorts of different actions in there, which is really great. We're seeing all of these different cases people are solving for, 76 different folks who have gone through and made a fork of this application. So really exciting to see all of that activity, all of that contribution. But what we want to do is make sure that we can more easily interact with that. If I'm talking about 80 or so different actions, I want to be able to say that these actions have to do with record lookups or glide aggregate activities, to be able to add some of that filtering down. While I was talking through that, you would have seen I came into my fork and I've just made sure that that is up to date. And that means that I'll now be able to go into ServiceNow Studio. Coming in here, just taking a quick sip of water. And what I will be able to do is, once I've opened the app details, I want to retrieve or pull, in this case, I'm going to pull the latest data from the remote there. So I want to pull from repository. It's been quite a while since I updated this. As you can see, this is back in the early days before a lot of people had contributed to that. I got a lovely nondescript error message, which is, of course, what we want to see. Take a quick look at it. As we can see the latest commits in here. Okay. That's so bizarre. So I can see all of those latest and greatest commits and changes from different folks in there. But for some reason, this is telling me that I wasn't able to pull that data in. So what we might do is we're going to remove this one and we're going to start again from scratch. That's always one of the ways that we can quickly go through and restart a process, of course. It's the nuclear option in this case, but because it's such a lightweight application and because this is on one of my instances and I've got that backed up into GitHub, I'm really easily going to be able to remove that application, remove the related sysrepo config. Again, going back into that table. Good thing I remembered the table name. We can see that that record still exists while I have actually removed the application record. I'm going to open and delete that. Got those 4 different branches that I've had on my there. Alrighty, coming back into ServiceNow Studio, and if you haven't seen our initial video, I walked through how to pull down a remote repository using the ServiceNow Studio beforehand, but if not, this is a good reminder. So what you do is use this create, not this create over here if my sidebar stops trying to come out, but this create over here, this main button. I'm going to go in and try and import our app. So I believe I've already got that on the history. I do not. So I'm going to come into Action Pack, copy the URL for that one. I'm going to come back to here. I want to pull down main, use this email, and MongoGH. Mongo, because my instance name is Mongo. It has a Raptor DB database, and so Mongoliensis being Velociraptor. I think I'm funny. It's just me, though. Alrighty, so 95% complete. Pulling in the latest and greatest, and because I had this through GitHub, I didn't lose any of that work by going through and deleting it. I will be able to get in the latest details there once it gets to 100% complete. Of course, we have to wait while I'm doing that live on stream. What I'd like to highlight while we are looking for this is, I mentioned earlier how an application sort of bundles together all of those different objects under it. And that, when I say application, I'm in particular meaning Flow Designer. What they're doing is, instead of, as you can see on my screen over here, where we've got 36 plus 8 plus 4 plus 41, we're getting into sort of the hundreds of different metadata files just for 4 actions, which is what that had at that point in time there. So again, by combining those, by instead creating those in one initial action and avoiding those sort of unzipped objects, we're able to be really smart and efficient with that XML file. But the downside being that when I try to look into a action pack PR, and if I come into here for an example, it can be quite tricky to go through and review those quickly. There's a few shortcuts that I've worked through, having built and worked with this for different periods of time. We can see 1,779 lines. But what I might do is I might come into this PR, some really fun stuff that you can see really quickly, little details that I like. You can see what version of ServiceNow this was released on. This is authored on release 28.100, that is to say 28, which is Zurich, and then 1 for patch 1, and then 00. So you're talking then your major release, your minor patch, and then your hotfix or lower values there, those 00, just indicating that I don't have patch 1 hotfix X, or whatever the case might be there. So small little things that can be interesting there. If I was to be looking at this PR though, and I wanted to see what sort of actions this user has performed, what you can do is you can take advantage of searching to go and look, for example, at things like step instance. Step instance is one of the core tables within Flow, because an action is built up out of a series of steps. So if I'm looking for the step instances, I'll be able to go through and find those individual records and look at their order. So if there was 3 script steps in this one here, I'd be able to step through them all to see what sort of behavior. You can see the values that are within that. Here's the script that that person has written, which is really awesome to see. And again, we're able to quickly use that even though we're sitting here in GitHub. That is, however, quite complex. We're still talking 1,700 rows. of text in that there. Hopefully by now my instance has finished pulling from that. So mindful that we've got 5 minutes left, I really like to call out to the chat. If you've got any questions, any challenges that you've had with Hacktoberfest or anything you're interested in, do feel free to add those in. I'm more than happy to continue to step through this, but also very happy to answer questions in these last few minutes here. All right. While we wait, so I'm just going to sync this up to date here. I've got 84 actions, really great to see, 84 different utilities that the community's contributed to really help our users and our developers, our peers to work through. It's really exciting to see all of those different contributions and people also making sure that they've got their usernames. So we can see Virage's contribution here on my screen, but also all sorts of different examples there as well. Really great to see some of these different ideas and ways people have tried to solve for challenges as well. We can see cases where people have had to work through different scope boundaries or work through other constraints that they're running into, using GUID as a sysid in particular and different references here. All sorts of, I think, really fun and interesting solutions and great ways to see how different developers solve their problems differently as well. As we've got 3 minutes left, I'm not going to be able to capture much of creating an automation category in time, but what I will do quickly is just show again the process of creating a new branch. So I'm creating this off main. This is going to be to my new branch, introduce cat support. Cat support, of course, for our slightly earlier in. I've got to get my double joke in there somehow. So we're moving to cat support. I'd then be able to go through and create files. I've got this new experience for doing so there, and I want to be looking for syshub category, which will then give me my different categories within Workflow Studio. So interesting that it's called Workflow, of course, because it's mostly flow, but nonetheless very interesting, but quite simple and easy to go ahead and add a category that might be glide aggregates, creating and submitting there. And then I'd be able to go through and add any of these actions themselves by properties into glide aggregates or whatever categories there. So really exciting, really easy. And then I'm able to go through, update that, and go through and commit that to my external repo. It's really exciting, really glad that I had the opportunity to run through this with everyone today. Thank you for jumping in. And if you're watching this recording later, I hope it's been valuable. It's been really fun to get to engage and also get to work in a different time zone than maybe some of our other streams are. A huge shout out and thank you to Earl for staying up to his 1 a.m. to help with this stream today. Really appreciate Earl and his wonderfulness there. So I really appreciate everybody for coming along there. Brilliant. Mindful that we're getting to the close. I can see a question from BJ or at Vidudlika in the chat. Sorry for mincing the surname there, where he's asked just about actions being created in a scope. Do we need to add a note in PR about, and really talking also about our cross-scope privileges. So that's just one thing to keep in the back of our mind, and a decision that we've made in building this application is that we want to avoid adding, changing the security layout of an instance. So that's something that's been sort of very carefully thought through, is to try and avoid changing somebody's security structure by virtue of installing this application. It's something that we're still working through, how we communicate best to to those users that we don't have those cross-scope privileges introduced, and that they'll need to add those. And there's definitely some of those ideas, and I'd love to see some contributions to the repo or suggestions to the repo using the issues about how best we can solve that, because there is some of those challenges we need to work through. Alrighty. Really appreciate, again, everyone for coming along to the call, the office hours, and hope you have a great time. Happy hacking, and have a great rest of your Thursday or Wednesday, if there's anybody left on Wednesday, which I guess would be Hawaii and maybe Alaska. All right. Thank you all. Now the real question is, has Earl fallen asleep? I have a feeling Earl has fallen asleep, which just means I will continue for a little while. Just going to continue working through. So what I did there by adding that workflow category, I might just find some of our other contributions to do with Cloud Aggregate and work on through. Need to find a Wiggles video for Wake Up Jeff, but for Wake Up Earl. Again, I really appreciate Earl having stayed up so late for this stream at all, and I do not blame him one bit for having fallen asleep, if that's the case, or maybe he's just gone to grab a drink of water. In the meantime, I will continue to do this, and at some point he'll probably take me off the air, or my wife will. Why not both? Alrighty. So instead of looking that way, I'm just going to go into Workflow Studio. And Workflow Studio will just give me an easier way to look through that list of actions. So still ultimately having those contributions into the same scope, so we will be able to continue seeing that back in Studio. Alright. Coming in here, we're in our actions. We can look at Action Pack in particular. Thank you for those who have stuck along. I can see that we've still got a few people watching, so appreciate that. I will continue to try and describe my actions. As a recap, our lovely Earl has fallen asleep.
No, I'm awake, I'm awake, I'm awake.
Oh, you're awake? Okay. Oh, I was so ready to go and find a Wake Up Jeff video. No, you're so okay.
I'm so sorry.
Thank you very much. You're so okay. I appreciate it. It's 1 a.m.
I'm so sorry. I was sideways. I was like this.
It is all good. I'm glad you got some rest. We will probably sign this one off again, but really appreciate you, Earl. You're wonderful. All right.